actually spoke to him about that yesterday, and we thought they took it very, very much too far. JD was very strong on it. So was I. So was Marco. And we've been speaking to him about it.
Starmer was very lucky in the blow-up in the Oval Office between Zelensky and Trump, because it completely overshadowed. In fact, the mainstream media in the UK totally ignored the most pertinent moment of that extraordinary 50-minute press conference for the UK, because it was the moment that Donald Trump, not just JD Vance, but Donald Trump called out Starmer for the complete retraction of free speech in the UK, something that Starmer had tried to deny just the day before, which was actually totally disgusting, given he was lying on the world stage in front of Trump, in front of Vance, in front of the entire media class, given that we know as an actual fact that there are currently grandmothers and mothers who are languishing behind bars in prison for 2 years for having sent a tweet or having sent a Facebook post. We know that journalists like Alison Phillips have the police coming to knock on their door if they write something that the establishment does not like. And we know that his Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, is preparing for a blasphemy law via the back door to try and deal with the issue of Islamophobia. So I won't ignore this story. Watch Trump's extraordinary response when asked about Starmer's free speech lie. We'll get analysis from Alex Phillips straight after 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prime Minister Starmer claimed repeatedly that his government believes in free speech and was not engaged in censorship. But his country's government arrests people for memes and thought crimes, and even more worrisome is pressuring American companies to censor Americans on its behalf. How can he be a reliable, trustworthy partner when he says things that are demonstrably false on such an important topic?
Well, we actually spoke to him about that yesterday, and we thought they took it very, very much too far. JD was very strong on it. So was I. So was Marco. And we've been speaking to him about it. Marco, would you like to say something about that?
We have concerns, obviously, with the conduct of those, particularly as it impacts Americans. And there's real concern that American speech, which is online, could fall into the hands of British or any country's jurisdiction. And so this is a point the Vice President made at Munich, and I think it's a very compelling one, that what unites us with Europe, as much as anything else, is these shared values, and one of them being free speech. And so if Americans are threatened by it, we're going to need to take action in that regard.
JD? It's actually a very important question.
We spoke about this in detail with the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and others at lunch yesterday. And I know that Secretary of Commerce Lutnick followed up in private meetings last night. This is really important. We believe Americans have the right to speak their mind, even if we in this room disagree with them. They have the right to speak their mind in the public square, which is often online these days. And we're going to defend that right as it pertains to American companies and American citizens vigorously if we have to. I do think that under the President's leadership, we're going to find common ground with our friends in the UK on this question, but it remains to be seen. The principle that will guide us is we believe in free speech in this country, and we'll fight for it for American citizens.
Mr. President.
Now, Alex Phillips, the reason I wanted to play that clip in its entirety is I think it's so significant. Firstly, shameful that it was an American journalist who asked about that. There hasn't been one question, by the way, from a British journalist about what actually happened in that conversation. What did they say to you during lunch? Not a single thing. And I think it is highly significant because while the American administration may not be able to protect us personally, what they absolutely can do is stop Labour going after companies in America like Google, like X, that want to protect free speech.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where it's a diplomacy done right, which is we're the closest allies to you. We're concerned about what you're doing to your people. We have your people in our hearts, but we're not going to mess with that because you're the one democratically elected to lead that country. And so framing it through the prism of, however, when it comes to social media platforms being regulated, these are American entities, and therefore that does make it an American interest. I think that Trump and Vance are deeply concerned about Europe. They think that the whole West is facing a civilizational issue. civilizational crisis. America was part of that, frankly, until January, because if we'd had Kamala Harris as the president of America, what a different world we'd be living in right now. And they basically said, look, we are saving America. We're going to make America great again. You now need to do the same. If the West is going to stand together, if it's going to still progress and prosper in a world that a multipolar world now with so many different interests, so many different blocks. If the BRICS group of nations really club together, that poses an existential economic threat. We're always faced with the existential cultural threats from the growing, the growing audacity of Islam, particularly in Europe. And what they're saying is, you need to look after the West as much as we want to look after the West, and you're not doing the job.
Exactly. I mean, look at this post from Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, over the weekend. Again, Alex, this was virtually ignored by the mainstream media, totally ignored. The rise in anti-Muslim hate crime is unacceptable and has no place in our society. Today, I am launching a new working group chaired by Dominic Grieve, KC, to define anti-Muslim hatred and Islamophobia. I mean, Alex, this is utterly chilling. It is chilling. I mean, seriously, think about this. You as a woman have so many reasons why you might want to speak out against Islam. As a gay man, I have so many reasons that I might want to speak out against this religion that wants to literally push me off the top of a building. And by the way, is teaching exactly that to young British-born Muslims in mosques across East London. And they want to criminalise that. That is clearly where this is heading. But first, the reason you're watching this show is that it's becoming increasingly difficult to trust mainstream media or the so-called fact-checkers who claim to determine what is true. And there's good reason for that, given the debate over free speech, the controversy surrounding Brexit, and how Trump and other politicians challenging the status quo are portrayed. But I have the solution. It's called Ground News, and it's the best way to stay informed and cut through media bias and narratives so you can get the facts for yourself. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. But let me show you this incredible website and app. It's a great app too, by the way, in action. So let's take the recent game-changing speech by J.D. Vance to the Munich Security Conference, where he tore into European governments, including ours here in the UK, for the despicable retraction of free speech. And what you can do on the website is see clearly in one place that 361 sources are covering the story. But then Ground News instantly shows how it's being covered, broken down by whether the outlets lean to the left or the right. This is called the bias distribution service. And if you scroll down, you can see every article about this topic broken down by the political position and ownership of the publication. So it means we can see quite clearly for ourselves that Newsmax and GB News gave fair and accurate coverage, focusing on how Vance finally had the guts to point out uncomfortable truths. By stark contrast, the left-wing HuffPost claimed the speech left all of Europe aghast. It didn't, HuffPost, let me tell you. While the Independent, as usual, they missed the story altogether, instead deciding to focus on a joke that Vance made about Elon Musk claiming that it bombed. What's more, Ground News gets to know you personally, providing you with the news stories you're interested in while also analysing your own biases. Now, my favourite feature is something called the blind spot feed. It surfaces upwards of 20 stories every day that you might not be hearing about because of the corruption of the mainstream media. So look, I know you love the news, but you don't trust the legacy media. So Ground News gives you the tools to understand the truth about what is going on in the world. It is the only way I read the news. It allows me to see through media bias and manipulative narratives. No more relying on the MSM to define the truth for you. Go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. Subscribe through my link for 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use for unlimited access. Should say, by the way, big thanks to Ground News, by the way. They are subscriber-founded. Supporting their work also supports mine. And for less than a Netflix subscription, you can get all of the world's news in one place and think for yourself. This is a game changer for the news junkies out there like me. That's ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show.
Yeah, and also I'm just fed up with this pandering to a particular community. I'm sorry, this is our country. You are here. We invited you here. Some might say perhaps we didn't, but you're living in our country. And I'm sorry, but members of your community, not all, but members of your community, members of the Muslim faith, have stabbed our little girls. They have bombed our arenas. They've plotted against the government. They persecute homosexuals. They hate our culture. I mean, the list goes on. And you're expecting us to say, we better make sure they're okay. You know, every time there's a terrorist attack, we were told straight away, the minute that a terrorist attack has happened, Islam is the religion of peace. No, it's not. No other world religion has this much beef with other world religions. You don't see it coming out of the Sikhs. You don't see it coming out of the Hindus. You don't see it coming out of the Jews. You don't see it coming out of the Buddhists. You definitely don't see it coming out of the Christians. The only world religion that doesn't abide anybody else, any other culture, any other ideology, any other belief system is Islam. And it's at the core of Islam. It considers itself the final and last religion, and all the others have to be destroyed. So I'm sorry if, you know, I'm phobic of it. I think it's not a phobia, because it's actually a very rational fear to have when you live in a country with terrorist attacks. We've seen again today what appears to be another terror attack in Mannheim. And what are we talking about? Well, you know, as a result of this, some people don't like Muslims. Really? Are you kidding me that there's going to be people who are perhaps less educated or don't sort of live in a multicultural part of the country, or maybe they do, maybe that's the problem, but they are worried about Islam and what it means for this country and how this is impacting on our culture, our legacy, our heritage? I mean, of course they are. You can't have people going around committing atrocities and terrorist attacks and go, oh, well, you know, nothing to see here, let's all move on. And, you know, you look back through the history of Europe and the Crusades and the battles, frankly, between Islam and Christendom, which have gone on for centuries. You know, you see it in sort of medieval onwards history of Spain. And you then look at the history of the Middle East. Okay, remember, Christianity comes from the Middle East. And you don't get any Christians there anymore. They've been driven out of Syria. They've been driven out of Palestine, you know, aka Gaza, who we're all supposed to have bleeding hearts about constantly. They've been driven out of the Lebanon by and large. Anywhere that Islam has grown into, it has driven out Christians. It persecutes Christians. It murders Christians. It takes Christian girls as slaves. It taxes people who aren't Muslim in Muslim countries with this thing called the jizya. It doesn't treat other people with tolerance. It doesn't say, well, we should all get together and work together as one happy family. And so if you cannot criticize a religion or a culture, and it's by no means saying everybody who's Muslim is like this. I mean, we all know that. I don't need to say that sort of mea culpa, right? I don't need to do that disclosure. We get it. Don't. You can't criticize a religion that is aggressive to all other religions, that wants to attack them, that wants to destroy them, that wants to eradicate them. If you then can't say that that is the case, you're in trouble.
Well,
you're
indeed.
in trouble.
But that is literally, I mean, it's like the dystopian future that, remember, Christopher Hitchens warned of about 2 decades ago. Now we're actually here. And I wanted to show you, Alex, this really fascinating exchange, for all of the wrong reasons, by the way, between Lewis Goodall of the fake news agents and Sadiq Khan, London's failed mayor, over Donald Trump, because it plays into a lot of these issues. Watch.
The president welcome in London?
Well, what I think will happen, my prediction, should President Trump come to London, is because, contrary to the views of others, we have freedom of speech. I think people in London will express their views about that.
But you're the mayor of London. Assuming he comes to London, which you almost certainly will you welcome him to this city?
Look, people know my views about Donald Trump. That's not going to change.
So you don't welcome him?
No, I think it is important to engage with the President of the USA.
In which case, why won't you say you welcome him?
But look, if he does come to London, what I'd invite him to do is spend time at Trafalgar Square, maybe on St. Patrick's Day, or the New Year, or Eid in the Square, or Diwali in the Square.
Well, would you offer to him to take him around the city?
I think it is important to actually bust some of these myths. I think it's important to show those people who believe the contrary that diversity is a strength, not a weakness.
Well, would you offer to take him around to some of the places he's talked about? He's talked about no-go areas. Would you take him to some of those so-called no-go areas?
I'd invite President Trump to a good curry on Brick Lane. Maybe go and visit a place of worship in London. A lot of prejudice comes from prejudging. And actually, one of the joys of the great city of London is our diversity. And by the way, that includes not just religious minorities, ethnic minorities, but people of different sexual orientations as well.
I mean, all the usual stuff, Alex. But I mean, let me tell you, you live in London. I live in London. What Sadiq Khan is saying is just not true. There absolutely are no-go areas in this city if you're a young woman, for example.
Yeah, most of the cities are no-go area at this point if you're a young woman. The idea that, you're going to take Donald Trump to take him for a curry down Brick Lane, he's suddenly going to go, yeah, this is amazing. Diversity in the UK is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. No, take him to Whitechapel, take him around Tower Hamlets, see how things are going on there. Why don't you? Take him to parts of Lewisham where kids are stabbing each other. This is ridiculous. He lists all this sort of synthetic nonsense, Trafalgar Square. Yeah, well, of course, in the middle of Trafalgar Square, if you've got a celebration for Diwali, it's very different to say, well, how about, you go to one of the very poor boroughs where you barely see a white face. It's utterly ludicrous. And well, this is the thing about Sadiq Khan. He's just a nasty, wretched, poisonous, toxic little man who, this is what the left do. They shower themselves in moral rectitude by hating other people. By hating people. Well, that doesn't make you big or clever or funny or strong or superior or admirable. It makes you an idiot. I can't wait for the state visit. I hope it's all bells and whistles. I hope there's sort of cavalcades going down the Mall. I hope there are people waving American flags. And I hope that there's a big balloon of Sadiq Khan in a nappy that's floated over Buckingham Palace.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go wherever you are.